Hi everyone. For this video, I saw something come up in my feed regarding Karl Jobst that I wanted to respond to. Specifically, I'm doing a video about this and Karl, not for the speedrunning stuff that he normally talks about, but something else. So what we'll do is we'll look over the message itself that he posted in his community posts, and then we'll talk a little bit about my past with Karl. We'll look into what exactly he's talking about that someone else responds to. And yeah, so we'll do it in that order. And it's not probably going to be the longest video that I've ever done, but it is something that I wanted to respond to because Karl's not a good person. Like, he's someone who in the past has investigated people who deserve to be investigated. That being said, he's also someone who's done some pretty fucked up stuff himself, including having fascist ties and being a sex pest, specifically a pickup artist in his case. So, that being said, the initial message that Karl posted that got my attention was this one. This was posted a day ago, so on April Fool's, though incidentally, it's not a joke, as far as I can tell. Even looking at the comments, it seems like it's actually serious, and it's getting quite a bit of traction. You also have to remember that Karl is someone with a fairly large channel. If we go to his channel, you can see that he has over 1 million subscribers. I don't know what his latest video was. He says, I removed my last video. Obviously people are upset, so it is better I address the concerns of the public first and make a video explaining everything. I would just ask you wait for my video before making a full judgment. Okay, so I don't actually know what he's talking about based on that message alone. But, you know, a few thousand people upvote his comment, and I'm like, okay, I don't know exactly what's going on. But then I see people in the comment section judging him, making a full judgment, as it were, on what he said. That kind of gives us an idea. Quote, I've completely and utterly destroyed my career and reputation, and I'm now bankrupt, you absolute legends. Hello, you absolute legends. Please pay for my food and rent. Karl Jobst. Can't wait to see Karl Jobst cover the Karl Jobst scandal. I've incurred a life-altering legal debt, you absolute legends. I would just ask you wait for my video before making a full judgment. We just got a full judgment from a judge. Like, you know, normally I wouldn't kick someone while they're down, but if you are basically fash-adjacent, which is to say, like, moderately fascism with masks, and you're a sex pest, I'm not really going to feel that sorry for you, especially if you've used your entire career to kind of whitewash those qualities about yourself. My prediction for the apology video starts off by apologizing that fans were misled, but that wasn't his intention. Shows the one time he mentioned the lawsuit was about Apollo Legend to show he was always open about the situation, but didn't want to talk too much about the case thanks to advice from his lawyers, so he didn't make the reason for the lawsuit a big deal. Says that this is actually why he made so many videos about Billy Mitchell, as those other videos were about completely different lawsuits, not related to Apollo Legends, but about his past with cheating, so he felt comfortable talking about them thanks to this distinction. Once again apologizes that fans were misled. Takes a break for a couple of months before uploading again. This apology video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. Textbook definition of you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. This is exactly the kind of thing you'd excoriate someone like the Completionist for. So yes, I definitely wanted to mention that someone like Karl Jobst has gone after other people for doing legitimately shitty things, and yet has done shitty things himself. And that's the problem with this kind of police approach to things, is that for starters, it has a kind of celebrity position attached to it, and it's used to sort of whitewash Karl as a result. So it's bad faith in that respect, insofar as it's acting as camouflage for someone who's fash and a sex pest. But two, it also presents a valid criticism of people who police others, insofar as, okay, well, who's going to police them? And again, I don't know what this is about yet. We're going to find out in a second, but I don't think it's a good idea. Like, if this is some egregious thing, which it sounds somewhat egregious because people are basically, calling for Karl Jobst's head, it kind of sounds like, and, torches and pitchforks, that kind of thing, string him up, tar and feather him. It doesn't sound like a small thing, and people are kind of responding to his hypocrisy and just calling him out. Okay, it's okay for you to do it to other people, but now you get to defend yourself. So basically the shoe's on the other foot. So I imagine that Karl is probably going to get a video out relatively quickly. Even if we go to his channel here, it doesn't look like there's a new video out yet. He has all of these old videos about Billy Mitchell, and I remember him mentioning Apollo Legend, who, from what I remember correctly, was someone who committed suicide. He was a streamer who committed suicide, and I don't know what Apollo Legend and Karl Jobst and Billy Mitchell all have in common, but we're going to find out, I imagine, here in a second. In regards to my past with Karl Jobst, I have investigated Karl before and written about him repeatedly in my book series. And one thing that I do is I write about my experiences researching speedrunners. And I, point in fact, did a piece about that back on January 13th, 2025. So 2 months ago, Those Who Walk Away from Speedrunning, where I talk about how my research used to lean more into speedrunning and how is Metroidvania being speedrun a gothic thing. That was sort of what I came up with while I was in grad school. It's what I wrote my master's thesis on. And then as I was doing my research during COVID and not really able to pursue my PhD proper, I interviewed speedrunners, largely about Doom Eternal, but also Metroid and various other third-person and first-person shooters. So Metroidvania are basically third-person shooters, if you want to categorize them like that. And that's kind of how my research was sort of geared in that direction, fighting monsters. And you could punch monsters, or you could shoot them, you could hide from them, survival horror, and I look at a lot of different genres. But one person that I remember watching in grad school was Karl Jobst, who was talking about Billy Mitchell even back then in 2018 when I was in grad school. So I remember Karl from back in the day, but it wasn't until more recently that I learned that he wasn't really a good person, that he was someone with a fash background, and he was someone who was a sex pest. And the point of this video, Those Who Walk Away from Speedrunning, is I had written a piece called Those Who Walk Away from Speedrunning, featuring Karl Jobst, because it talks about Karl. So there's, I'm just reading the piece itself, and then I go over the footnotes, then I segue into Karl Jobst and just segueing into him and what does he have to do with all of this. And then I look at his, Andrew Tate, and conservative men now say it is gay to like women, 2020. His pickup artist video. So Karl Jobst, pickup artist. This isn't something that I uploaded, someone else uploaded it. It's still online, and it is, it hasn't been taken down as of this video anyways. So as of this year, Karl Jobst pickup video evidence is still online. But if we go to the piece on my blog, Karl Jobst, I talk about how Karl Jobst is not a good person. From r/speedrun, the drama starts in 2021 when a person known as Tomato Anus severed ties with Karl due to some company Karl kept, i.e. a neo-Nazi named R. White Goose. There's a lot of messages going back years regarding the server Goose was on, but those are from someone whose own testimony isn't the most reliable. And basically, I go over those messages, but I also go over messages from someone responding to that who's not friends with Karl or this other person, and they talk about how Karl is racist and he uses the N-word and he has Nazi friends, and he named his son Maximus Wong as a cock joke, and he's sexist towards his wife, misogynistic. He has a token Asian wife, similar to Derek Chauvin. And then I go over the sex pest video and respond to that in the YouTube video. But this is Karl, his wife, and their son, Daddy, Mommy, and Maximus. So again, like, it's a very nuclear family with tokenized elements, which often white bigoted men will use to whitewash themselves. They'll get a token wife and then be like, I'm not racist, I have an Asian wife. That was the argument that Derek Chauvin made, and it's the same kind of argument that Karl Jobst is making, even if it's just ipso facto, by virtue of action. And he's also, he calls his son Maximus, which is a huge red flag because it's like, yes, Hail Caesar, that kind of thing. But Maximus Wong, so it's Orientalism on top of that, where he makes his son a walking dick joke, which is sad, if I'm being honest. So that's my history going over Karl in the past. I've written more about him, but if you want to know that, just watch this video or read the article that it's quoting, because it basically discusses most of the stuff that has to do with Karl that pops up in my book series itself. And now, this, I presume, is the video in question. Smash JT. This is a fairly large channel. It's not a small channel like mine. Like, my channel doesn't even have 1,000 subscribers, whereas this channel has 112,000 subscribers. So, this video by Smash JT, a person with a larger channel than mine but a smaller channel than Karl Jobst, said, Karl Jobst lied to everyone. And this one is legit insane. I did not see it coming at all, and a stunning conclusion to one of the most infamous legal battles in recent, or nay, even going so far to say retro gaming history. Australian YouTuber Karl Jobst has now officially lost his defamation case to former Donkey Kong champion Billy Mitchell, and fans are not happy, not just at the ruling, but more interestingly at Jobst himself for how he portrayed the situation. And if there's a link here that says full story, so this is the article that belongs to smashjt.com. So this is a gaming journalist, and this is the video talking about essentially the same contents as this article, but the article, produced by the same person, written by the same person, is going into full detail. So I suppose it would make sense just to look at this and then, watch the video, I suppose, as well, to see if there's anything else. So this is a day old. So this actually, it's funny because this released on April Fool's, but to my knowledge, unless this is an April Fool's joke, because it's released on April Fool's. So I don't know. I feel like, I'm like, wait a second, is this a joke? It says fans are pissed at Karl Jobst after truth comes out in Billy Mitchell lawsuit. So I have to wonder, because Karl Jobst says, I removed my last video. Obviously, people are upset, so it is better I address the concerns of the public first. Like, that doesn't sound like an April Fool's joke, and people responding to him. Now, I, of all people, should know that even if something were or were not an April Fool's joke, it doesn't matter. Like, people will go after you. So when I did my Doom Eternal review and I said no trans people or girls allowed, and I released it on April Fool's, it wasn't actually a joke, but some people thought it was a joke, but other people didn't care either way. They're like, I don't care if it's a joke, I still want to kill this person, basically. So I kind of, if this is a joke, I feel Karl's pain, and on some level I can sort of sympathize with him suffering, regardless. Like, oh, this is on April Fool's, but they're still going after him anyways. But just based on what he's saying, it doesn't sound like a joke. His response doesn't sound like a joke. The people in the comment section don't sound like they're joking, and the person who's writing this doesn't sound like they're joking either. Now, we could get to the bottom of the article and it could be a joke, ha ha ha, funny funny, but they also have a video here where they say Karl Jobst lied to everyone, and it says April Fools, and the person even says, Smash JT says, unfortunately, this is not an April Fool's joke. And they pin it. And then, people are responding to that. I wonder how the Karl backers feel knowing their money went directly into Billy's pocket. So, yeah, it sounds, as much as I dislike Billy, I have to admit that he was in the right to sue Karl. I never thought I would utter those words. What a day. Yeah, no shit. Like, I've heard about this for years, and that's another thing that we have to keep in mind before I look at the article, is that when you have someone who's defending themselves in bad faith, and who comes from a position of privilege, and you only hear their point of view. For years, we've heard about the Billy Mitchell case, but it's come exclusively from Billy Mitchell. Now, that being said, the way that Karl talked about things, he made it sound like Billy Mitchell was in the wrong. He did a lot of good journalism, but holy shit, I can't believe that, like, okay, Billy Mitchell could potentially be in the right, because he sounded like a really awful person. And, he was an awful person. I'm sure that just because this happened, it doesn't mean that Billy Mitchell is a good person. It just, because he was someone who was known for slap lawsuiting people. And he was someone who, from what I understand, was spurious. He did cheat. And it wasn't just Karl Jobst talking about that. King of Kong talked about that back in, like, the mid 2010s, from what I understand. So Billy Mitchell is a vindictive person, and he's very mean-spirited, and he throws his money around in, very disingenuous ways. But it sounds like there's something that happened with Karl where we heard basically everything from Karl's point of view, and Karl was acting in bad faith, so surprise, surprise, maybe they both suck. That's kind of what it sounds like. So, yeah, according to Smash JT, in the pinned comment of his YouTube comment section for the video connected to this article, this isn't a joke. So let's read it. 4-minute read, not very long. Fans are pissed at Karl Jobst after truth comes out in Billy Mitchell lawsuit. Karl Jobst loses defamation lawsuit to Billy Mitchell, and fans feel betrayed. Community fallout grows as crowdfunders and fans alike learn the real truth behind the case. It wasn't about cheating at all, which is weird because Karl Jobst, for years, said that that's all it was about. This is weird. I can almost hear this in Karl's voice, even though the author isn't Karl. This one is legit insane. I did not see it coming at all. Okay, Karl doesn't really sound like that, but in any event. In a stunning conclusion to one of the most infamous legal battles in recent, or nay, even going so far as to say retro gaming history. Australian YouTuber Karl Jobst has now officially lost his defamation case to former Donkey Kong champion Billy Mitchell, and fans are not happy, not just at the ruling, but most interestingly at Jobst himself for how he portrayed the situation. Full disclosure, I consider Karl Jobst a colleague and even somewhat of a friend of the channel. He's always been incredibly cordial in every interaction we've ever had, and he's even assisted me in creating one of my videos exposing Gerard the Completionist. So it's genuinely tough for me to see things end like this. That being said, Karl isn't perfect, no shit, and neither is Billy, no shit, for that matter, which is what makes this case so intriguing in the first place. Consider me intrigued. Drama alert. Karl Jobst forced to pay roughly 395,000 Australian dollars in legal fees. So is that a fine? And then the legal fees on top of that? So what is that, like $1 million or something? In defamation case against Billy Mitchell. Ouch. After what feels like years of leading the charge against Mitchell's allegedly fake Donkey Kong high scores, Jobst became a hero to many retro gaming purists and digital sleuths, fighting back against cheaters and putting the gaming community in a place of respect and trust. But now that the court ruling is in, and more importantly, now that the actual content of the lawsuit has come to light, supporters are beginning to feel pretty well used. After following this situation for years and rewatching all the videos about this situation last night, my thoughts are Karl manipulated his audience into believing that this case was about the cheating allegations and not the Apollo legend lie he was actually being sued for. Yeah, Karl never mentioned that. Ever. He only ever talked about Billy Mitchell and Billy Mitchell this, Billy Mitchell that, and he'd have the wrestling game footage where you had the Billy Mitchell character and the Karl Jobst character. Like, he was working overtime to just talk about that and nothing else. Like, I think he mentioned Apollo Legend once in passing, but like literally in passing. It was in by no means, from what I understand, made or mentioned in connection to the Billy Mitchell lawsuit. Not to my knowledge. Certainly, if he did mention it, it was so brief and it was overshadowed by everything that he said about Billy Mitchell that I just can't remember it. Like, I remember him saying it, but I just once in a video, within the past year or two, but I just can't, it rings a bell and that's it. So yeah, Karl Jobst forced to pay roughly, okay, so drama alert. And then Karl Jobst, imagine threatening to sue someone because they accused you of cheating. So yeah, there's some screenshots and things like that. And this person, the author of this article, continues, I covered the entire gamut of what I could on my live stream below, about an hour long, but worth the watch. And huge shout out to Nicholas De Oreo for the VOD and chat with Keemstar, who ultimately played a massive role in what the judge ultimately ended up deciding. Keemstar was the connecting piece who directly referenced by the judge as implicating Karl in the wrong, and how Jobst knowingly was pushing false information even after being informed by Keemstar that it wasn't accurate. The fallout. A community feels lied to. From the start, Jobst framed the lawsuit as a fight for truth in gaming, focused primarily on exposing Mitchell's supposedly illegitimate scores. I believe this to be the case as well, but as it turns out, it had very little to do with what he was actually being sued by Billy for. His followers, many of whom donated thousands of dollars to help cover legal expenses, rallied behind him under the belief that he was being sued because he exposed a cheater. I can't say I blame anyone because Karl comes across as a very trustworthy person. Yeah, because he's a con artist. That's what con artists do. He was a bad actor. And he was a better bad actor, because he's a Nazi, than Billy Mitchell. It's like Billy Mitchell's a dick, but he doesn't have that same like mask to that Karl does, because Karl's like, a serial killer kind of charming, where he's like, trust me, but he's acting in bad faith, and he's like, trust me, I'm going to take your money. He's a con artist. So he's a con artist that is going after other con artists. Like, that's like, it tracks. Like, it makes perfect sense. I'm not the slightest bit surprised, honestly. But even so, I guess I'm having said that, I am a little bit surprised that this thing with Apollo Legends and Billy Mitchell and Jobst, like, he talked about Billy Mitchell and cheating so much and never mentioned Apollo, and it was basically the only source that was talking about it. He was the only gig in town, and that's how, con artists work. They control the flow of information, and then they manipulate it to get what they want, which generally speaking is money or respect, usually both. And Billy Mitchell obviously has money, but he cares about respect. Whereas Karl Jobst probably cares about respect too, and his brand, but he cared about money because he was being sued by Billy Mitchell, and we're going to find out what that is. I can't say I blame anyone because Karl comes across as a very trustworthy person, and it was easy to take him at his word, but as it turns out, that was a bad idea. According to the official court ruling, that wasn't the core of the lawsuit at all. Judge Ken Barlow found 5 specific defamatory imputations in Jobs' content, most notably his suggestion that Billy Mitchell's lawsuit against Apollo legend Ben Smith was somehow a contributing factor in Smith's tragic suicide. Like, in other words, this wasn't a case about scoreboard fraud at all. It was about a character assassination, and the judge wasn't having it. And then Nicholas De Oreo says, don't shoot the messenger, but Karl Jobst was sued in mid-2021 for the Apollo legend comment. The first video linked to his retraction. The GoFundMe was created in response to a second lawsuit threat Billy had sent 2 years later that ultimately never materialized because it was dumb. Yeah, and this is like a classic case of broken clocks, right? Because Billy Mitchell is someone who, for all intents and purposes, is like the perfect patsy, because he's someone whose trust is already shattered, and this person, Karl Jobst, was talking about Billy Mitchell, and basically saying things about him in regards to his character that weren't true, at least according to the judge, and that's all that matters. And it's like Karl could have just focused on the cheating side of things, and that would have been fine. But he said things apparently about Apollo legend vis-a-vis Billy Mitchell, who was suing him for that and not the cheating stuff, despite the fact that he's known for that. And I'm kind of surprised that Billy Mitchell didn't say something, but also it kind of makes him seem more professional than Karl, where he's like, okay, we'll let the courts handle it. And it's like all Karl had to do as a muckraker was say something. Billy Mitchell wouldn't. And so I kind of wonder why Billy Mitchell didn't say something. You could say he was being professional, but he is someone who is kind of known for slap lawsuits and stuff like that, based not just on Jobs, but also other people who were reporting on this who knew Jobs, like Nicholas De Oreo and the Smash JT author as well. So it's like, obviously Jobs didn't say something because he was acting in bad faith, but I kind of wonder why Billy Mitchell didn't say something. Oh, I know why. Because he was suing him for it. It's like, okay, he was actually doing the smart thing, which was, he wasn't suing him for the cheating stuff, so he was talking about that, but he was actually suing him for Apollo legend, and he was probably listening to his lawyers who are like, don't say anything about the case outside of court. So it's like Billy Mitchell was actually, I never thought I'd say this, being smart about it, and it's like, so this was basically a let them fight situation, and Karl lost versus someone else. And in the case of Billy Mitchell, his con was about who has the biggest score in terms of Pac-Man. It's like, okay, who gives a shit, honestly? And in Karl's case, he was suing him to take money from his own fans and lying about Billy Mitchell to assassinate his character regarding the memory of Apollo legend. So that's some completionist level bullshit. So it's like he was doing something that was far worse than what Billy Mitchell was doing. And that doesn't mean that Billy Mitchell hasn't done some stuff that, isn't good. You know, it's like slap lawsuits are shitty things to do, but ultimately he's doing it over a world record in Pac-Man. It's like, again, who cares? Whereas Karl Jobst was fleecing his own fans to defame Billy Mitchell in bad faith regarding a suicide victim. That's really fucked up. Not only that, it ruins all of the good activism that he supposedly had done. You know, in regards to the completionist, people are going to, you know, basically throw all that out of court in, you know, the court of public opinion, because that's what this is. They're going to throw that out. They're going to throw out, you know, anything that doesn't have to do with Billy Mitchell, which admittedly a lot of what Jobst was doing did have to do with Billy Mitchell, but you know, there was some legitimately, it seems like, good activism in terms of what he was doing, even if, let's be real, it's just tied to like speedrunner history. So it's like, all right, it's basically just a bunch of angry nerds fighting amongst themselves. But in the case of the completionist, you know, I did think that there was some legitimately good journalism there, activism, and it was responding to people who were con artists. It's just that Jobst was also a con artist. And he's actually a worse con artist than Billy Mitchell, because if I look at the two of them side by side, it's like, yeah, slap lawsuits suck. There's no getting around that. But also just like, who's it actually affecting? You know, it's like, all right, speedrunning world record holders and all of that, and it's obviously important to them, sure. But the other person, like the completionist, was someone who was taking money and fleecing his fans to basically use his dead mother's name in bad faith to get money out of people. And Jobst was doing something closer to that than what Billy Mitchell did. So it's like, wow, yeah, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. Not all that glitters is gold. Let's continue. The info coming to light here has left most folks in the community absolutely stunned. The very thing Jobst obsessed over for seemingly forever, the cheating allegations, wasn't even what cost him the case at the end of the day. Fans now feel misled, even manipulated. I'm going to open this up. So yeah, this is just... Okay, so this was 2 days ago, actually. So yeah, just like the case and everything, like obviously they were talking about it in April Fool's because they didn't want to wait until after April Fool's, but this is 2 days ago now, so this was still in March. Oh, I thought it was on Billy Mitchell being a cheater. Yeah, it seems that was a false claim that Karl repeatedly told people when the main focus was on the settlement with Apollo Legend. That was the explanation he provided when crowdfunding his legal expenses. So that's not a good look. No, it's not. A harsh 220,000, what I assume is American dollars reality check, Karl Jobst has been ordered to pay roughly around $220,000 in American currency to Billy Mitchell in damages, including another 50,000 Australian dollars in aggravated damages due to Jobst reposting the offending content and mocking the lawsuit. In a statement on X, Jobst admitted defeat. I lost. The judge found Billy to be a credible witness and believed his entire testimony. I know many of you will be upset with this, and I am sorry for that. Which again, he's acting like, oh, well, we fought the good fight. He's not actually admitting culpability. He's still acting in bad faith writing that. But for many, the apology to everyone came way too late. Jobst's admission that he may not be able to repay everyone who donated has only poured more fuel on the fire. Some fans have called it a grift. Yep. Others saying it was a bait and switch. Yep. You know, it's straight out of, you know, the white Nazi con man playbook. You know, it's the same shit. The same kind of shit that the completionist would do. Same kind of shit that Trump or Elon Musk would do. You know, it's like, yeah, he's a Nazi, so he's going to do Nazi shit. Because Nazis lie and steal. And the trust that once underpinned his tight-knit community of truth seekers and high-score watchdogs is beginning to unravel quickly in real time, and honestly, I've never seen anything like it. And I'm sure Billy Mitchell's just like having his time in the sun. Billy Mitchell basks in victory. Meanwhile, we got Billy Mitchell over here taking his victory lap and has wasted no time celebrating. In a series of smug posts, he declared, "Nothing like the smell of victory in the evening air." Billy Mitchell always has a plan. Thank you to everyone who supported me. I am grateful. Yeah, this is another thing we have to keep in mind. If there was anything legitimate about what Karl Jobst said about Billy, and furthermore, all of these other people who were just kind of taking Karl Jobst at face value, all of that is just swept aside, and Billy Mitchell is basically exonerated. For all we know, he could get reinstated at Twin Galaxies. Maybe, maybe not, as far as that goes. As far as I understand, there was some pretty bad blood between those two. But it doesn't change the fact that, like, Billy Mitchell is basically, instead of assassinating his character, Jobst redeemed it and took it all on the chin to boot. It's salt in the wound for Jobst and his followers, many of whom once saw Mitchell as the main villain. Now with this verdict, the roles feel disturbingly reverse. Yeah, and it makes all his fans look stupid. Where does Karl go from here? While Jobst says he'll consider his legal options moving forward, the damage may already be done. I like to think he will appeal, and hopefully the courts will have some mercy. But my goodness, this is rough. Not just to his bank account, but to his reputation. His platform was built on credibility, integrity, and standing up to corruption in gaming. That's the thing, though. Like, he stood up to corruption in gaming, but he never actually acknowledged his own past. He never came clean. And it's like, okay, I can't be the first person who called him out for what he, did in terms of being a sex pest and having fash ties. So it's like his reputation, as far as I'm concerned, was always a facade. And that's something that he never addressed ever in any of his videos, in any of his posts, as far as I could tell, unless it was like squirreled away somewhere, like behind like a Patreon paywall or something like that. There was just nothing. So it's like, yeah, like credibility, integrity, standing up to corruption in gaming, but he never actually took that beyond gaming. He was still a dude bro at the end of the day. He was still a Gamergate asshole, basically. He was just a white moderate version of that. And behind the veneer of white moderacy, you have fascism. But the revelation that his lawsuit wasn't about cheating at all has undercut that very foundation. More than anything else, this case has shown me how quickly public trust can vanish almost instantaneously, especially when people feel they were misled into funding something that wasn't what it actually ended up being. So it's not that people feel they were misled, it's that they were misled. So make no mistake about it, Karl Jobst lied to a lot of people. Not just me, but like his fans, like paying fans. Whether Karl Jobst can bounce back is unclear, but one thing's certain, the retro gaming community is left feeling burned, and the narrative has dynamically shifted in ways no one saw coming. What began as a crusade for truth has ended in controversy, confusion, and community betrayal. It's like a gothic novel. And for Billy Mitchell, this wasn't just a legal win, it was a PR victory that may have turned the tide in the most unexpected of ways. Yep. Geez, I swear, never a boring day out here. Smash. Yeah, so this is, I'm not really that surprised, but also these things don't always come to light. So yeah, I guess we may as well watch the video itself. And we can just kind of like skim through it maybe.
On this one, and what people were led to believe compared to what it actually ended up being. Because holy crap, not only did Karl Jobst lose the lawsuit, but he's lost a tremendous amount of credibility in the game community. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Smash JT. I covered this situation on my live stream briefly last night, talking about the ins and outs of Karl Jobst getting sued by Billy Mitchell for defamation, and potentially because Billy Mitchell didn't like Karl Jobst exposing him for cheating in games, and all this stuff that Karl was focused on with all his videos. Well, turns out that wasn't actually what he was really being sued for. It was because Karl was pushing forward a narrative that Billy had something to do with Apollo Legend offing himself.
Negative financial impact on Apollo Legend, and that he still believes that the settlement was a contributing factor to his decision to commit suicide.
And then Karl Jobst basically pushing that narrative forward and not being very apologetic about it.
That's gross. Yeah, so like that's like psychopath kind of stuff. Like Billy Mitchell's a smug asshole, which, fine, whatever. And but a lot of that has to do with, like, you can be an asshole about one thing and be completely right about something else, and that's what happened here. It's like, yeah, okay, he cheated at Pac-Man, so what? That's not why he was suing Karl Jobst. And Karl Jobst basically pulled the wool over everyone's eyes, and including mine, because I didn't know about the Apollo Legends thing, and Billy Mitchell was just basically keeping quiet about it. And um, I'm not going to blame him for that. It's, if anything, it's a good idea. You don't discuss what a lawsuit is about outside of court. Like, so at least I don't think that's a good idea. It's kind of stupid, because you're basically, why have a lawsuit at all then? If anything, it sounds profoundly illegal, and that's why Karl Jobst lost, if anything. But so the takeaway again is that Karl Jobst was wrong because he was fleecing his fans regarding a fan who committed suicide, and using that, basically covering that up in bad faith, whereas Billy Mitchell cheated at Pac-Man, and his slap lawsuits largely had to do with that, and in hindsight, it's like, I'm like, okay, who gives a fuck about Billy Mitchell? It's like, I don't, it's like, it's now blood's in the water and people are going to go after Karl Jobst like nobody's business.
Hit that subscribe, give me a like, and check out smashjt.com for the full and exhaustive article as far as I could get. Everything put together in one place regarding not just the lawsuit, the outcome, but also the responses from Billy Mitchell and Karl Jobst, and where we go from here. Karl Jobst has lost his defamation lawsuit against Billy Mitchell, and fans are feeling very betrayed.
Have you seen the Karl Jobst court ruling?
Yeah, Billy Mitchell won $395,000.
Did you see how that was did you see the actual decision, why he came to that thing?
No.
You got named by the judge in the ruling.
For what?
Because you told Karl that Apollo Legend didn't have to pay, and then Karl published the video anyway.
Oh.
So he's like, Daniel Keemstar.
Yeah. He's like, oh. Yeah.
Keemstar had contacted Karl Jobst directly. We're watching this now on stream. You are intrinsic to this result.
Well, yeah, because I'm friends with Karl, and I'm friends with Billy Mitchell. And if you ever watch one of those documentaries on YouTube, Keemstar is always the side character that pops up. And so, I reached out to Karl and I said, hey, I was talking to Billy, and, this certain thing is wrong in your video. And then Karl told me, oh, okay, he's going to correct it or something. And then I guess he didn't correct it?
He eventually did take it out, but they're saying it was 6 months later.
Right.
Yeah.
So some people even went so far as to claim is, man, Keemstar screwed over Karl Jobst, which I would disagree and say, no, I think
Well, no, it sounds like he just kind of was like, hey, he's between both parties, and he said something and he told Karl, hey, you should fix this, and then Karl didn't. That's on Karl.
Keemstar was just the guy keeping the peace, and Karl willfully ignored it.
Yep.
Because it was an agenda he was trying to push forward.
To get money from people. Not even allegedly at this point. It's like the proof's in the pudding. It's ipso facto.
Allegedly. From the start.
It's not allegedly. It's like it's done and dusted. Like he literally, the court ruled on it, so it's not allegedly anymore. It's officially. It's a matter of record.
Jobst had framed the lawsuit as a fight for truth in gaming, focused primarily on exposing Mitchell's supposedly illegitimate scores. I actually believe this to be the case as well, but
yeah, no, I watched Jobst for years. Admittedly, I would tune into his other stuff for a while, but then I eventually just stopped watching him once I learned that he was fash, and like a Nazi. Like I remember tuning into the Completionist stuff and the Billy Mitchell stuff just because I thought, okay, I may as well take that to its conclusion, and the completionist stuff seemed like, okay, Jobst is a piece of shit, but he, at the very least, was someone who was investigating someone else who was a piece of shit. And I kind of thought that's what was happening with Billy. But in Billy's case, versus the completionist, I didn't realize, the fact that the lawsuit was about something completely different. And then, again, that's on Karl.
As it turns out, it had basically nothing to do with what he was actually being sued for. Karl's followers, many of whom donated thousands of dollars to help cover the legal expenses,
Yeah, like $200,000. Wow.
had rallied behind him under the same belief that I had, that he was being sued because he was exposing the cheater that was Billy Mitchell, when in reality, no. I mean, yes, Billy Mitchell was trying to sue him for defamation, but it wasn't because he was being exposed as a cheater. It was because he was saying that he had something to do that ultimately led to Apollo Legend offing himself. And Karl Jobst pushing that narrative forward and not being very apologetic about it.
I know it was the catalyst for why Billy came after Karl as hard as he did. But yeah, the Apollo Legend stuff has like a significant shadow looming over this court case.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Materialized because it was dumb. And that threat of a lawsuit is what I consider my options. Meanwhile, we have Billy Mitchell on the other. His platform was built on credibility, integrity.
Okay, yeah. So he's basically just going through the rest of the article. But yeah, so another thing I just want to say to conclude, thanks. Well, for starters, thanks to Smash JT for bringing, covering this initially. Like, this is the first thing that popped up, and it's very much something that it's appreciated. It's and he's being, I do think he's perhaps, he's admitting, like, look, I was a friend of Karl's, and he helped assist me in creating one of my videos exposing Gerard to Completionist. So he knows him from work. And that's fine. I've known people at work who turn out to be shitty people. And that happens. So, and he seems like he's being professional about it. He's just kind of talking about Karl, like, look, Karl, kind of, there's no way to really defend any of this. It's like there are no winners really in this, I'd say, except Billy Mitchell won big time, and Karl just straight up lost. Like, this is the exact opposite of what Karl was promoting this entire time. And if anything, like, he I'll say that his con was good insofar as he fooled everyone, but he played with fire and he got burned. Like, he was conning people in a court of law. Like, if he was doing this, he was doing this outside a court of law, but then Billy Mitchell sued him. And, the one lawsuit didn't stick, because that's how slap lawsuits work. But the other one, not only did it stick, but it just, like, led to Karl's downfall. So, in that sense, con artists only stay on top for so long. Very, very rarely do they continue, to ride off into the sunset, unless, like, you're a member of the bourgeoisie, you're a member of the owner class, and by virtue of your position, your class position, you can basically do whatever you want. If you're untouchable in that respect, if you're like, I don't know, Donald Trump, or even something like Elon Musk, whatever happens to Elon Musk, a lot has to go wrong to affect people like that. Whereas Karl Jobst is, he's a YouTuber with 1 million followers, but he's not someone who can afford to pay, $200,000 on top of the legal expenses. And, he's going to get sued now by all of these different people that he fucked over, so, like, he's opened the floodgates as far as that goes. He's going to lose his sponsors, potentially. The Raid Shadow Legends, sweet sponsor money, which, is it was a gambling game sold to kids that is made by an Israeli company or produced by an Israeli company. You know, it's already like super shitty. All that's going to go away, and with this, because Billy Mitchell has, unfortunately, the power to make that happen. And just also, it's like Karl lost like fair and square. Not only that, he came out looking really, 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 really bad. And that's just, you know, what I wanted to conclude on. Ultimately, is that Karl was someone who was always left a bad taste in my mouth. You know, just on top of like the fact that he was a sex pest and fascist and sexist and misogynist, you know, he was trying to present himself as better than he actually was. Billy Mitchell, not so much. Like Billy Mitchell's like, whatever, fuck you, I'm the best, you know, and he's a dick. But you know, he wasn't lying nearly to the same extent about the same things that Jobst was, and that is uh, kind of satisfying. Actually, I'm not gonna be, I'm not gonna lie. And in Karl's case, like one thing that he would do is that he would be like, you know, hello, you absolute legends, and I always got the feeling that he was like fluffing up his audience, you know, stroking their egos. And in doing that, he would be like, buy these products. Here's a sponsor. Raid Shadow Legends, Manscaped. And he always came across as really kind of scummy and just frankly unlikable, you know, and like that suave pickup artist sort of approach. He never lost that. Like if you watch the original pickup artist video with him, he never really changed. He just changed his audience. So instead of going after lonely guys and selling them sex, he sold them a different kind of lie while puffing himself up. And now that balloon is well and truly deflated. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Well, now the emperor has no clothes. So I'm definitely going to be covering this as it unfolds. Not because, you know, muckraking journalism isn't exactly my bag. I write about it academically, but it's not something that my YouTube channel is really dedicated to. I don't really have a dedicated topic for my channel yet. If ever, it's changed over the years, and I just, you know, I used to do video essays, but I've kind of moved away from that just because it is a lot of work. And instead, you know, it's just I kind of talk about whatever. But in regards to this, like I do have a bone to pick with Karl, and from my history with assholes and speedrunning, this is like Christmas for me. And so it's like I never really rooted for Billy Mitchell, but in the grand scheme of things, he lied about a Pac-Man record and slap lawsuits in regards to that and threatening people. That's absolutely not okay to do. But what Karl Jobst did compared to Billy Mitchell, it sounds a lot worse. And on top of that, you know, I hope people start paying more attention to the fact that Karl is, you know, fash-adjacent, that he is a sex pest. And he's just an all around not a very good person. So now that the rose tinted glasses are broken and people can just see the scales fall from their eyes, maybe they'll kind of wake up and start to acknowledge that Karl's not a good person. It's unfortunate that it took something like this for that to happen, but all the same, it's something that, you know, it's like, okay, well, this is going to happen regardless. So it's view this not as a tragedy, but as a silver lining. You know, it's like the wrongdoing that happened to Apollo Legend came to light, and the people being swindled by a con artist, Karl Jobst in this case, came to light. And also, you know, to be fair to Billy Mitchell, you know, his character assassination could end as well. I'm not saying that he was a good person, but focus on why he was actually a bad person, you know, and don't just believe this lie that Karl was telling so that he could pay his court fees, basically. And yeah, so I don't know. I'm here for it. I'm here to see how this all shakes out. It sounds like this is just beginning. But yeah, so in any event, thanks again to Smash JT for covering this. And I hope that you thought or found my thoughts about this interesting. This is just something that admittedly I've researched, but you know, I wasn't following the case too closely at this point. So now the fact that it's just blowing up like this is kind of crazy, because I was worried about like posting my book, my latest second edition to my first book, my PhD, on April Fools, and I'm like, yeah, it's an April Fools, you know, is this a good idea? But then these people are talking about this on April Fools, you know, and they're like, this is not an April Fool's joke, you know. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes me feel better. But in any event, yeah, so that's the video. Stay tuned for more coverage on this and other stuff besides. And until then, take care.